So then, according to one of the most advanced material theories regarding the nature of objective reality, it is the presence of our minds observing and interacting with the universe itself that appears to be part of a process that promotes reality into existence. Now, to understand how that can be, it is important to emphasize here another one of those parallels that exist between our minds and the mind of God. And that is, just as the eye of our mind does not have to be directly aware of the objects in our minds, the image of a globe, for instance, in order for it to continue to exist and manifest into reality within our minds when we finally do recall it, likewise, the eye of God's mind does not have to be directly aware of the earth in order for it and our bodies to continue to exist and manifest into reality according to design. And that's because the structural integrity of the objects in either subjective reality is fixed and established in the correlated patterns of information that underpin their construction, and are always ready to yield forth their objectivity whenever consciousness, any consciousness, merges with the information. Now, the point being that God Himself does not have to be directly conscious of His own personal mental holography, meaning the earth and our bodies, in order for them to appear to us as real objects suspended in a spatial dimension. For you see, because we are chips off the old laser, so to speak, it is the presence of our consciousness within the informational field of God's mind itself that allows us to act as subsequent lasers that can explicate His mental phenomena into reality. Remember now, quantum theory itself implies that it is the presence of our consciousness within the universe that seems to promote reality into being. And thus, logically, the very first aspect of God's informational field that our consciousness would naturally come in contact with at the moment of our conception would be the information that forms our body. And to use the physicist lingo here, once the initial collapse of the quantum wave function occurs at the juncture where our consciousness merges with the information that describes our body, it subsequently displays the dynamic attribute of position, presenting itself as a separate appearing object suspended in a spatial dimension. And because our minds are literally fused to the body itself, we are from then on subject to the relationship that our bodies have to the rest of the objects in the universe, similar to the relationship that the key has to the die and the paperclip at this level of the hologram. A relationship that at the universal level is governed by the laws of physics that God had to establish in order to create such a dynamic reality in the first place. So it is the presence of our own minds within the informational field of God's mind that not only allows us to experience the reality of our bodies, but also every other object in God's mind, as the holographic-like information that describes their reality is filtered through the 5 sensory windows of these bodies, which function as an interface between our minds and the mind of God. You see now, because our bodies encapsulate our minds in a womb-like enclosure that I talked about earlier, and because they are seamlessly united with the rest of God's universe at the subatomic level, they literally introduce our consciousness into the inner dimension of God's consciousness. Like being captured and held within a tiny localized area of information that is part of a greater matrix of information that forms a tremendous and coherent dream for lack of a better word, that we call the universe. A dream that belongs to another living being. So just see it that way now. The universe is like a highly ordered and super advanced real dream, so to speak, occurring within God's mind, and in which we participate unwittingly and wholeheartedly due to the absolute believability of the conditions set forth before our senses. And in conjunction with the metaphor of the universe being like a real dream, the huge proportions and vast distances of separation within the universe is the same illusion of proportion and separation that occurs within our own minds when we dream. Size and distance are relative. And for an example of what I mean by relative, this little image of a globe of the earth in a human mind could actually be the same size as the real earth in God's mind. But you see, never the twain shall meet. At no time will they ever be superimposed upon each other for comparison. That is the essence of relativity. They exist in two separate dimensions of subjective reality, and the informational parameters regarding their size or any other aspect only have meaning to the explicating consciousness or consciousnesses within the context of the particular reality itself. Now the point is, don't be overwhelmed by the size of the universe. For you see, from a certain perspective, our minds are the same size as the universe. Where we diverge from God is in the realm of order taking place within our minds.